making sure that we are building the right capacity in order to build, deploy, optimize our different 5G network. I don't want to be long, but definitely we have right understanding of the challenges, but I believe that with the willingness and with the motivation, then we can also address those challenges ourselves.
Dr. Akira, I'm, as it is obvious, an old guy, which basically means that I'm writing everything, not using mobile or all those, new things.
Yes.
Now, in Africa, there are approximately 1.6 billion people. In Africa, there is overwhelming majority of young population, who are like my sons, cannot live with all these technical things. Isn't that a challenge, or that's a chance?
Yeah, good point. I have to agree with Mr. Mustafa about the challenges, but as he said, I also believe that the previous statements were a bit pessimistic, too much, and now you are referring to this young generation, right? I also have a small kid. He was born with a screen on his hand. So I think the right statement is about identifying which are the exact use cases for Africa where 5G can and will make sense, right? So I think there is this massive young population in Africa that are willing to not to stay behind the other markets, right? So I think we all live in this digital society. So first I have to slightly disagree with the previous statements. I think it's a matter of identifying specific use cases for Africa, and we have already. If we look at, for example, we have a mobile operator in South Africa that is pretty much, their main business is now based on 5G, right? We have 5G to enterprises that are already happening in Africa. We have cases in Botswana, we have a case in South Africa. And when it comes to these young generations, I think there is a big demand if the infrastructure is there available, because it's all about these days about ecosystem, right? Different from the previous generations where everything was mostly supplied by the operators. Now it's a matter of providing infrastructure, and the ecosystem will be empowered or enabled to create these other use cases. So I think probably those previous statements were a bit using that previous logic of the other previous technology generations. So I don't know if that answers your question, but this is how we see where we see difficulties and challenges, we should see also as opportunities. Right?
Exactly. Fully agree, although I don't think there is one specific answer to these very, very specific questions. Mr. Safeka, what realistically can be done in a relatively decent amount of time, meaning 6 to 7 years, to truly push these 5G networks throughout Africa? I read a pretty strange for me article stating that in Africa, by 2030, that's why I said 7 years, 26 billion US dollars contribution to economy can be made by 5G overall. Now, 26 million for the whole Africa, for me, it's not a huge amount of money. However, I don't think that's the money you should get rid of. What realistically can we mind all the challenges, all the strengths, all the weaknesses can be done?
So, when I look into 5G, and I have been in this industry for a relatively long time, I would say that 5G represents to Africa the same opportunity as the mobile phones represented in the past. So, because it allows the African countries to close the gap in terms of communications to other more developed countries. And we saw this happening when the first mobile technology arrived in Africa. It was a boom in the continent. I see the 5G allowing the same opportunity because this is a technology which really allows to build a ecosystem, as he referred, that can drive the economy. And this can help the countries if they do the right steps in terms of regulation, in terms of the policies, government policies, fiscal incentives, and so on. It allows the country to come into the digital area using a short path, which at the other hand will help a lot in terms of the different development goals in the country and so on. When I look into the Unitel, into Angola, for example, I work for Unitel, it's the major operator in Angola. And we started this vision with around 5G some time ago already, 2016, 2017. And we have been building the infrastructure to allow us to then implement 5G, like putting fiber to all sites and so on. Right now, between 86 and 87% of all our sites are connected to fiber. This was done long before we launched 5G, because we saw if we would continue implementing microwaves or implementing satellite links and so on, we would be at certain time very limited. So we did these big investments in fiber, connecting all the sites and so on. When we launched 5G last year, at least this part of the challenge was solved. Okay, was solved. It remained other challenge, like you mentioned already, in terms of other infrastructure like energy and so on. But if we see the technological development in the last time, there are solutions in place, like using more energy-saving solutions or powering with solar technique, which has been developing a lot, or using batteries to gap power outages and so on, instead of using generators. There is many solutions out there that can be used to overcome these difficulties in terms of the infrastructure. And if we look into this and as well into the opportunity which can arise from using 5G, I think the opportunity is much, much bigger. This is why I see that the countries, if they really want to develop a digital ecosystem, they should really invest in 5G instead of continuing investing in 2G or 3G technologies. Okay, 4G is still present, okay, it's still a very, very good technology. The investment should continue, but not in 2G or 3G.
You mentioned, and now this is the question for all three of you, and all three of you are coming from the industry. I'm an ex-politician, so maybe I should answer the question, but the question is, you mentioned the regulations. Now, my question is, why do you think that in some countries that acknowledge the need for 5G and mention the word auction or tender for frequencies, why they are slow in pushing at least these auctions to start with, or tenders for 5G frequencies? Why there is a problem with regulator and regulations? This is, why do you think there is a problem?
Yeah, I can just give my opinion on that. I think that some of the regulators in some countries are still focusing in regulating for the old technologies. For example, in Angola, we have a regulation which is, in my opinion, much more innovative. and we get license. They are not related to technology. We can use the frequencies with the best technology which is available, which is much more simple. And even to launch 5G, it was given that opportunity by the regulator without those auctions and so on. Eventually, in the future, this will be done, but for now, it was not necessary. And if we see the experience as well in some European countries with the auctions on 3G license, it was paid a huge amount of money, and then the operators didn't have the money to do the investments. And this is something that African countries should avoid. Why should the operators pay a big amount of money in license to the states and then don't have any investment to actually develop the infrastructure, which will contribute a lot to the country's development? I think, to me, it's clear, the answer.
Next question that I do have that I do not fully, let me put it this way, understand, is the question of frequencies. If there is no coordination within African countries over the continent about the frequency issue, can that be the problem? For example, if I'm coming from country A, I have my 5G mobile, and now I'm talking as a stupid user, not as industry or medical doctor or person that has a huge transport company. So I'm just a stupid user. I have my 5G mobile. I'm coming from country A. 5G is on one frequency. Going to country B, where by chance 5G is on the other, and I cannot use it. Is it possible to really coordinate this issue at Pan-African level somehow?
Yeah, maybe I can answer to this. So definitely it has to be coordinated at Africa level. What we believe is it has no value for any country to have unused spectrum or not well-used spectrum. And we have to envision that in the future, 5G will be everywhere. Today, we are mainly talking about the mid-band in terms of spectrum, but one day we need to see that 5G will be on the low band, on the mid-band, on the high band. And whatever use case that we have in the neighboring country need to be also working in our different countries. So definitely it has to be coordinated, and again, frequency should not be seen anymore as this golden egg that can generate revenue for the government, for the country, but more an enabler for economic growth. And that is where we will definitely see the difference. But it is important that it is coordinated.
Yes, I agree. If we think about one of the main challenges today about any new technology in Africa, right, it involves affordability, right? So it's important to have the scale. So I think in that sense, vendors, even these multi-country operators that we have in Africa, must have this joint, coordinated, as you said, effort to bring the scale, to bring the benefits of scale and the standardization across the different territories in Africa, because most of the countries, we share the same challenges, geographical challenges, affordability challenges, infrastructure challenges. So if we don't have this kind of common standards, it will become difficult for us to catch up with the other more developed markets.
And maybe on this affordability point, I want to also offer as example, the bright example of Unitel, where, as you mentioned, we need to check on what are the use cases applicable to Africa, and we start those use cases. So here we have the NetCasa, where it is running over 5G, and it is applicable use case, and it has a lot of value, it has a lot of sense. So I think having this approach really can address this aspect of affordability. Because in the affordability, you have two dimensions. You have the dimension on the spectrum and the investment that the operator need to do in order to enable the 5G. but you also have the dimension of the devices which the end user need to use in order to enjoy the 5G. As we speak, the prices are currently prohibitive, very expensive, but if we do as Unitel and we focus where the use cases are really pertinent today with 5G, then we can start as we see in the different countries, and we don't miss that opportunity to finally close this gap and not have Africa behind again.
That we discussed before the session. Yeah. Basically, there is a gap. This may be a chance not to make it wider.
Absolutely.
Yes. But actually to come very close.
Exactly.
to the countries that are much more advanced. Now, another question is actually about affordability, and that's something that you actually mentioned. Can companies come in decent future, which means 2, 3, 4 years, with the handsets, with the mobile phones that can use 5G and that are much cheaper than telephones now? Because mine is using 5G, although in my country there is no 5G, which is of course a strange coincidence. But the price was 600 euros of the telephone. So, most of the people, even in my country, cannot afford to pay 600.
So it's on the ecosystem, right?
Yep.
So as we speak now, the ecosystem is maturing, and definitely as we progress, the price of the devices will go down. We've seen it on the 3G, on the 4G. The same will happen on the 4G. But again, 5G is not only on the NBB, on the phone, okay? We have various use cases that can also benefit from the 5G. And I think it is a joint effort of the ecosystem, the government, the regulator, the operator, the vendor, all the industries that you are representing here, the business, understanding how this ecosystem is moving, what is your role in the ecosystem, and how can you absorb it and include it in your different process. That will help also to not miss this digital transformation. And eventually here we will see the opportunity not only on the device, but also to bring affordability in the various and different use cases, which again ideally have to be specific to Africa in order to address some real challenges that we have here in Africa.
Will the industry try? Did you want to say something?
No, just I would like to add some statistics to what the colleague was saying. I don't know when was your case of 600, but we track.
I lost my mobile during a basketball game. So it was last basketball game before Corona pandemic.
Okay, so but the ecosystem has really been maturing fast. So what we see in the industry now, we have around 1,800 devices supporting 5G, not just handsets, but CPs, etc. And we have more than 330-something devices costing less than $300. And we even see some devices around $100. So it's maturing fast. So the opportunity is there, yes. So, and the networks as well, as you said, we have more than 100 global networks supporting FWA, for example. That is a very applicable case for Africa, where the fiber is costly, or it doesn't make a business case to deploy fiber to the rural areas. FWA has proven to be
So you're strongly promoting and advocating FWA, right?
This is the fact. It's not me
promoting. Okay, no.
Yeah. This is what we see.
Yeah.
The market is identifying these opportunities, as Mr. was saying here. So.
Now, actually, it was Mr. Safeka who first mentioned this need to leave the industry to invest, to leave the money, not to grab everything by the government during the tenders. Now, I know you will be very positive about this issue and question, but will the industry be strong enough to appeal to the governments, to the ministries of finances, to decrease or cancel different taxes or even para-fiscal taxes that are present in the system and that are connected with either handsets or computers or any sort of equipment. And if governments are ready to do so, will the industry be ready to promise that it will invest that amount of money, that extra margin, into 5G? Certainly the answer is yes, right?
Yeah. Yeah, if we see that many governments now have what I would say a digitalization agenda. So I'm not talking only for government here in Angola, which has as well, but many other African countries have such agendas. And in order to drive those agendas and to have results, really, we need to have such service enabled, the digital services, which requires infrastructure. Not only 5G, can be as well on 4G for sure. But why to invest a lot now in do huge investment on 4G when we have 5G is still a little bit more expensive, but much more feature-oriented technology, and which is much more efficient in terms of the investment compared to 4G. So logically, it would be better to invest in 5G. And if we would like to have digital agenda still, tem que mexer isso aqui? Okay. If we would like to have... Posso continuar? If we would like to have a successful digital agenda, then we have to work with several incentives. And one of those can be incentives on the infrastructure development, on the CPEs, terminals, and so on, because the benefit for the state, for the countries, and so on, is, I think, for everyone very, very, very clear. Just to come back a bit to the previous point which was discussed, one thing I believe is that in providing such connectivity service using 5G, which represents a different way of communicating before. We pay a price. When we moved into 5G, you are always on. You don't count anymore.
Temos uma grande diferença ou uma grande lacuna naquilo que são os conhecimentos, e nós precisamos olhar para lugares chaves no país, os negócios, para poderem, de certa forma, vencer esses desafios de uma forma mais fácil. Temos muitos desafios nesse tempo para podermos providenciar incentivos naquilo que é o desenvolvimento do 5G, porque o país vai também se beneficiar muito mais no futuro. Amadou mencionou antes, de uma forma tão breve,
Does Africa have
um número suficiente de engenheiros, um número suficiente de staff para poderem fazer, não é uma questão de usos de usuários, mas é uma questão de capacidade de uso, uma capacidade de técnicos. Eu acho que
we look at the operator, huge investment in terms of building the capacity. And now it is clear requirement on the different discussions that we are having that we need to build this capacity. If I look at the vendor, I see huge number of initiatives that we have in order to build this capacity in local. I'm sure Fabio will mention, but from Ericsson we have this program that we call Connect to Learn, where in the different country we are looking to launch some educational program to also offer this, to build this capacity in local. And what we see, and that is very positive as well, wherever we go, we travel around in Africa, we see a high number of schools being open, a high number of young people going into science, going into technology. I think all of that is really a sign of encouragement. Now, we still need to continue that. How do we absorb that capacity that are coming out of school? I'm sure all of you receiving CV for internship, for first job, and so on. So how, as a country, do we absorb those capacity, those competence, so we can really transform them in the benefit of the industry?
Yes, I can't. Yes, we also identified this challenge a long time ago, and we have a couple of initiatives similarly to what Mr. Mustafa was referring to, partnering with universities, fomenting or supporting the channels, also the partners to also get certification, getting trained. So we provide that kind of a facility to bring the training to them if they cannot attend a specific training overseas, right? So definitely when it comes to digital transformation, we all know it's not just about technology, but we also need to upskill people so then people can leverage and get the most benefit out of all this computational power and this artificial intelligence and all these new technologies. We still need people behind that, upskill with these digital skill sets. And we as vendors, as operators, even as government, we need to provide that capability to bring this, especially the youth, to, as we already mentioned, not be left behind. So we don't need to keep on bringing, depending fully on overseas labor and specialists, but we develop locally African talents based on these local capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Well, since basically we have 2 or 3 minutes to go before the end, can we agree, at least 4 of us, that these 2 messages or sentences I read at the beginning were extremely pessimistic and even unrealistically pessimistic, that there are the challenges that do exist, that all 3 of you gentlemen have mentioned, but these challenges can be met and can be prevailed somehow. Of course, process won't be ideal. Life is not ideal. But at the end of the day, this can be a huge chance for Africa. Can we agree on this?
Absolutely, and especially agreeing from Angola, where we have the 5G already on air, running, and people already connected on 5G. So definitely it is not applicable. And here is a great example.
It's clear. I fully agree. There is much more opportunities and challenges outside.
Yes, the good thing about being a bit later than other markets is that we are learning quickly from the good practices and also from the mistakes made in other markets. So I think 5G can be a good opportunity for this continent to catch up. Mm-hmm. So different from previous generations, I think now we have an opportunity to reduce this kind of a digital divide.
Okay, thank you. Let me thank to our speakers for this fruitful and interesting debate, at least it was for me. Interesting. If there are any questions you would like to ask? Yes?
Hi, my name is Annie. I'm in Dell Technologies. And you mentioned investments in 5G. Do you think you will, as a telco, you will recover your investment from the consumers, telco, do you think you will recover your investments from the consumers or from the industrial use cases, which I believe 5G was made for manufacturing, transportation, the industrial ones. And that's, I think, where the money is in 5G, not in consumer. Because as a consumer, I simply don't want 1 gigabit per second on my mobile and then charge me $300 a month. No, I'd rather pay $200 a month or $150 and get 250 megabit per second, which is fine for most of what I can do. I'd like, as a telco, to hear your opinion on this.
Okay. I think there are 2 points in your question. So the first one, you're right. I think the largest or the huge potential that 5G can bring is related to the industry, right? We see already many cases popping up in terms of smart manufacturing, smart healthcare, smart mining, smart ports. So there are already cases out there, you're right. But we also see in these markets that have introduced 5G 4 or 5 years ago, they are already identifying new revenue streams from the consumer side when they offer more data for the same price, or when they offer, like in the Middle East, we have examples of operators offering an upgrade to 5G, for the same kind of volume of data, but they are charging 4 or 5 times more. And the consumers are willing to pay for that experience, right? So I think it depends on market to market, but we've seen in Asia, in the Middle East, many examples of operators that are already leveraging from these add-on packages or upgrading high-value 4G customers to 5G, right? So we have today technology to identify specific niches where these campaigns can be successful. So the answer to your question would be both. So it's a matter, as we discussed here, to identify what will work best for Africa first, and then we learn from these other markets.
And maybe if I can just add, it reminds me one question we had at the transition from 3G to 4G. And that is a question that we all ask at that time. Why should I move to 4G? My 3G is working so well, and I have everything that I need on 3G. And today, no one here would dare to be on 3G. We are
em permanecer aí. Então, o que é certo é que hoje os aplicativos para 5G ainda não saíram, mas é assim que a tecnologia funciona. Se perde a capacidade, haverá inovações sempre em cima das anteriores. Acho que esta resposta já cobriu a questão que eu ia levantar, mas no caso particular da Unitel, ambas as perguntas servem não apenas para os 5G, mas também para as empresas. Não veremos, num curto prazo de tempo, casos de automóveis que autoconduzem-se na indústria. Para nós, em Angola, não serão esses casos. Mas, conforme mencionei antes, há muitas empresas que precisam comunicação. Comunicação e 5G pode providenciar este serviço de confiança. Na medida em que vamos transitar de megabits, etc., subscrições para estar sempre online. Então, este é o objetivo das empresas, é ter a conectividade contínua para terem acesso aos clientes, e para tal estão dispostos a pagarem. A partir desta perspectiva, teremos informações do mercado do consumidor, assim como do ponto de vista de empresas. Temos mais perguntas? Não? He's also a spokesperson. He's supposed to be part of the panel, but he came late.
Mas o trânsito tem destas surpresas. Em primeiro lugar, obrigado
opportunity to listen to the final part of the intervention of Engineer Safeka, and I would like to say that I agree with the interventions that I've had. In fact,
I was saying that on its vast majority, I do agree with the final part of the intervention of Engineer Safeka. Indeed, I guess that the national market also needs to aim at what are its use cases that might be of priority. Indeed, we see a lot of interesting stuff in other jurisdictions. Guess that over here we'll also have to entail the development model, the stage where we are, and it will be probably a very useful tool, namely on schooling, on health, and several other uses. The market is a bit more pointing out that obviously private use and always on, but I guess there's a lot of pages to see and turn about 5G. Well, I guess this could be our closing moment. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much once again, and let me once again thank to our panelists.
Thank you.
I'm actually coming from chemical industry. You cannot imagine.
Oh yeah.
How much this? I cannot imagine how much this.
Yes.
All
develop ambitious online service. So everybody knows the online service like Uber and Amazon, and that's what we as established players have also done by developing our own online platform to ease the access to this imagery to our customers. So as Airbus, we have developed the One Atlas platform, offering an access to both archive imagery and also allowing the users to task the satellite themselves. So they can literally play with the satellite to get new acquisition through their web browser. So that's also a very important trend shaping the industry. And the last trend that I would like to mention, it's a bit less mature, but it's coming fast. It's the rise of artificial intelligence. So we have already some very interesting outcome with artificial intelligence. And by the way, artificial intelligence is allowed by the two former trends, because for artificial intelligence, you need a lot of imagery to train your algorithm. And you need also the cloud technology to be able to host this huge volume of data and to process this data. So artificial intelligence is rising, and it's certainly a trend that we will come more and more. We will see more and more in the future for the development of ambitious application. So very quickly, just I'm showing you how we contribute to the different trends. If it works. So we operate a constellation of 8. So it's going. Sorry?
Downward.
Down. That's what I'm doing actually. Huh? Yeah, that's it. So we have a constellation of 8 optical satellites and 3 radar satellites, which is our contribution to this massive flow of imagery as Airbus. We operate them directly. We have also some partnership in radio frequency acquisition with a partnership with OK. And we prepare the future with a future constellation of 4 satellites featuring 50 centimeter resolution, which aims will be to acquire 3D imagery, CO3D. We work also on a pseudo-satellite or a stratospheric drone, which is called Zephyr. And we obviously work also on the next generation of radar data. We have, within this constellation, we have 2 Pleiades Neo satellites that have been launched in 2021 and that are successfully operated since then. So Pleiades Neo, it's 30 centimeter resolution, adding to the existing 2 Pleiades at 50 centimeter resolution. So this is an example of Pleiades Neo. Artificial intelligence, here we have an example. We can go even lower than 30 centimeter resolution and offer to the market 15 centimeter resolution. It's not resembling, it's really artificial intelligence allowing that by brightening the color of the image, by sharpening the different contrasts. So that's also an important step forward and a real outcome of artificial intelligence. So from the 30 centimeter GSD, we offer a look and feel. So it's not anymore a GSD, but we offer look and feel of 50 centimeter imagery. Here it's also an outcome of artificial intelligence. More and more we use very high resolution data with artificial intelligence to get automatically the building footprint, so which is very useful for cadastre, for census application. And these are the kind of application that could be useful for Angola, actually. Because basically, in a big country like Angola, mapping is essential. You need to know where are the people, how to access them. That's very important. And you need to have fresh data to implement your policy, actually. So,
temos o Jeffrey aqui do nosso departamento que está preparado para responder essas questões. Na NASA somos muito técnicos, somos abertos para cooperar com todos dentro dos nossos limites, porque por ser governo naquilo que podemos fazer. Alguns dados nós tornamos público para acesso de todos e alguns precisam de autorização. Para ser específico, aqui para Angola, há o GCM, é o modelo climático global. é algo que eu gostaria de encorajar a Angola a fazer parte, porque isso vai dar-lhes acesso a essa grande base de dados. Concordo contigo que ter informação é uma coisa, agora saber como usá-la é outra. É um pouco difícil responder, porque não falo pelo ou para o governo, tenho a minha própria opinião e não posso misturar as duas. Tá bom, se não quer, não quer continuar, porque não é o enviado especial para responder essa questão. Muito obrigado. Talvez eu possa começar com a abordagem da Maxwell. A capacitação, orgulho-me em dizer que estamos no 7º ano a apoiar o desafio de observation. Tem aqui algum pessoal na sala. Se tiver aqui pessoas que trabalham com imagens, encorajo-vos a se juntarem a nós. Começou como um desafio na África do Sul, mas agora é já uma questão pan-africana. Temos vários parceiros. Damos acesso às nossas imagens online. Então, a capacitação é um fator principal. Se usar um exemplo, estarei em acordo com Luanda, por exemplo, e voltando à sua pergunta de como é que podemos apoiar o país como Angola, ou um país não autônomo que está a começar nesse processo, assim como Angola está a começar. Se calhar isso já ultrapassa algumas agências espaciais. Para nós, eu diria que daríamos a informação necessária. O DTM, DCM, por exemplo, houve grandes voos no RDC em Luanda. E pela primeira vez no passo houve mapas de estabilidade. Não acho que é um país mais resoluções de 30 centímetros ou com... Isto está a mudar altamente da forma como respondemos ou mitigar estas questões. Está a ser um grande impacto para as imagens satélite. Para acrescentar no que foi dito, temos uma iniciativa similar, ajudar as pessoas a descobrirem essas aplicações de satélite. Organizamos com a agência.
Worldwide event now, so not only in Africa, it started, and we work closely with every year with university. You know, the principles of hackathon is 24 hours.
4 horas por dia. Então, damos imagens que eles podem usar para fazer protótipos. Convidamos as melhores equipas para apresentar os projetos. Então, temos essa iniciativa que é complementário com aquilo que é feito pela NASA e agências espaciais que contribuem na democratização desta observação. Gostaria de dizer, conforme o Maxwell é uma empresa comercial, estamos preparados para apoiar pessoas também que estejam preparadas para investir nessas tecnologias.
Then by first giving them access to imagery, so it can be a really easy access through our customer service or through the One Class One Line platform. It can be something more ambitious through direct receiving station, for instance, and that drives a lot of training capabilities and to the benefit
precisam ter pedidos específicos a dizer queremos, se disser apenas que queremos cooperar suficiente, temos que ser claros em especificar o tipo de necessidade que o país tem. Para complementar no que disse, é importante saber que os dados observatórios do satélite são complementares. Quer dizer que complementa outros recursos, quer dizer que deve ser integrados noutras bases de dados para junto serem usados e ter um valor agregado.
Really important also is to know how to use that product, that added value product, how to use in the decision process. Okay, for in any field, in the field of the agriculture or any kind of field where it could be used, but it's important to integrate that data, that products, added value products in that process. And it takes time, actually, so you have to start as
to do the work, to learn. You can rely on the external to do the whole work, right? I mean, Angola can go cooperate with anybody to send satellite, but to get the full advantage of it, you have to train your people.
Train. Yeah, sure, for sure. Yeah. Yes. I think I'll also add that, you know, if I look at Angola specifically and the work that GGPN's done, I mean, they have their different techs, and I'd encourage everyone to have a look at the GGPN website. They have Agri-Tech, they have Ecologica, and their asset tracking, I forget the name of it, someone from the audience help me. Gestech. I mean, Gestech was recently awarded the top AI project, or in the top 20 AI projects in the US. So congratulations to Angola. You know, pick a topic that's going to make a difference. You know, I'm having a look at, we recently completed a project in Madagascar, which was a full land information system. It obviously integrates not only the Earth observation data to demarcate land boundaries, parcel boundaries, but also all the software that comes with that to create title deeds, and it's a big program. These are big bank-funded, World Bank-funded programs. So there's funding there as well. Identify a budget, identify something like a land program, and develop the capacity on top of that. And if necessary, you know, choose that topic as our colleague from NASA said, have a specific topic where you're looking for support on the capacity building side.
Yes, yes, surely. Well, on my side, I believe in the learning by doing approach. Huh? So you have access to data, and you understand the needs expressed by some people in your country, some organization, and you try a prototype like GGPN has done with this different platform. You try, you fail, you try, you succeed, you demonstrate, and I think that's a good approach to learn. Yes. Besides the academic approach, which is important as well, but learning by doing is certainly a key success factor for developing the knowledge in the country.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
okay.
To that point, that's a very good point, right? And countries like Angola, you have the disadvantage, right? It's not like we have a mature industry where people can go do internship or learning. I'm not sure how we go about, giving them hands-on training.
Okay.
Ask NASA.
Okay, really interesting. Well, knowing that the GGPN have already developed some projects related with the downstream service, and some of which have been recognized with the international awards. What kind of downstream applications do you think that could benefit Angola?
Well, I'll take a first stab. I think some of the exciting technologies that are available now and coming, for example, I've been involved in 3 projects covering over 500,000 square kilometers in Angola, mapping surface minerals with shortwave infrared technology on our Worldview 3 sensor. So this is identifying, Namibia do this very successfully. They invest as a ministry of the geological ministry, invests money in understanding where geology is more attractive in certain parts of the country and increases their exploration license for those areas. So this is a form of pulling in taxes, ideally. Another interesting application area is, my colleague from Airbus was talking about some of the new technologies, and certainly resolution is a race, but also revisit. We're about to launch 8 new satellites that will have the capability to image at 30 centimeter resolution up to 15 times inside one day. And the mind boggles at the type of applications. We're starting to look at traffic monitoring and all sorts of different types of applications. And I don't want to go through them all now, but just to give you an idea. So those are just a few ideas from my side. Thank you.
Yes, okay. Okay. One very interesting application that I have in mind, because it's actually tested in Angola, it's oil spill monitoring application. So you know that oil and gas is a big activity in Angola. Okay. Environmental concern is also there. Yes. So and oil spills can impact the coastline. So it's important, thanks to the combination, radar imagery, which can take images regardless of the weather condition, to carry out, and that can discriminate quite easily the oil from the water, to locate and measure the oil spill in the sea. And yeah, that's the kind of service that have a huge impact, because it drives the responsibility also of the oil exploitation, and it brings evidence also that can be opposed to this kind of industry. It gives evidence that there are oil spills that can impact the environment. So that's the kind of very useful application. So you need revisit, you need a multi-sensor approach, radar and maybe optical, to go beyond the recognition, but also go to the identification of the problem. So that's something that could be very useful and tangible as well.
Yes, tangible is important also.
And I can add to that, like I look up earlier today, about 45% of the Angolan population is less than 14 years old, right? So we have a huge population, young, but also unemployment is very high. not everybody can work in oil and gas, right? So all these Earth observation systems we're talking about can enable better a potential for improving agricultural yield. So people go into business, into field, when they can make a good living. So if agriculture become, and Angola, there's no reason why Angola is not a powerhouse for agriculture, right? US people were farmers. You go to Texas, they're very rich, agriculture. So this can enable those kind of things too, if I think is done right.
Okay, interesting, for sure. Yeah. Agriculture also. Yes. Okay, really interesting, but our conversation has to be an end, and the time is
one thing I want
pressing.
to add,
Sure.
I was going to bring some of the books, so I left some of this back there. You can see some of the things we do on International Space Station. So there is a Q code, grab one when you leave, there is a Q code, you can look the type of work we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
But do you need any kind more astronauts to
Exactly.
To be there? But are you inviting us just to join the...
That's right. At least you can see the type of thing we do. So, yeah.
Just kidding. Okay.
I think it's up there on the table. Yeah.
Maybe if we can summarize our conversation in 2 or 3 words, maybe I will choose capacity building, access to imagery, national data set is the same. Open source imagery also have been talked, but really just a little bit. But education and learn by doing. It were the words that I would choose. I don't know if you want to add anyone else, but I think that's the most important that could summarize our conversation. I don't know if there is any question, from the public, from the audience. Any question? Sure.
You talk about the satellite that has the capability of refuel in the space. This type of technology was thinking about the space debris in order to reduce the numbers of satellites that are launched every year, or is just a commercial point of view, like I will just sell fuel on the space?
Very good question, and I think all the space manufacturers are highly pedantic about the fact that we're creating space junk. So we have we owe it to society to try and manage that. So sustainability in space is a big topic at the moment, and that is why NASA is supporting that particular mission. Of course, you can't go and refuel satellites in space now. They have to have something to connect the fuel tank into. So, the satellites that are going up now,
que vão hoje já
still building and still designing the technology with the robotic arms. But for sure, it's about sustainability on the one hand. Of course, if you buy a Ferrari and you can only drive it once, and then when it runs out of fuel, you can't use it again, this is a problem too. So, there's certainly a commercial component to it too, but I would like to think that the initiative is started for sustainability in space.
I think that both matters are always related.
Sure.
Any other question? Yes, please.
Thank you a lot for the time and this amazing presentation. My question goes a little bit. Thank you a lot. Thank you a lot for this presentation.
Obrigado por esta apresentação. A minha pergunta é mais para a parte sul da Angola, no Cunene. Nós temos uma área muito seca e eu queria saber quais são os programas que serão implementados através das imagens satélites para podermos vencer esse desafio que essa população tem ciclicamente. Obrigado. Olá, eu posso falar sobre isso. É um problema, mas é um problema com solução já. Quanto mais pensar nisso, assim como o exemplo que eu dei antes, se nós tem sempre causa e efeito. Algumas vezes nós não ligamos que o fogo hoje vai causar impacto na chuva daqui a alguns anos. Então, mas se nós olharmos, por exemplo, sobre as imagens, nós vamos ver que existirá uma questão de... Existe uma forma de sermos proativos. Uma coisa que os Estados Unidos é bom, o que nós fazemos bem é, quando nós temos um problema uma vez, 2 vezes ou 3 vezes, nós arranjamos arranjamos uma solução para isso. Quando a Covid, por exemplo, aconteceu, nós vimos que, nós criamos essa doença, mas como é que já temos solução para isso? É porque nós já pensamos na solução quando aconteceu no passado. Acho que um dos grandes exemplos é a capacidade que a NASA tem. O mapeamento que a NASA, por exemplo, faz também é uma das formas de solução. O mapeamento de aninho, por exemplo, vem e vai, de certa forma, também faz também medições de temperatura nos oceanos. É um trabalho caro, mas se vocês me perguntarem, os investimentos são justificados. Vamos terminar esse painel. Quero agradecer a todos os participantes que transmitiram, de certa forma, uma informação importante e transmitiram também o seu conhecimento. E muito obrigado por estarem aqui conosco e obrigado por essa conversa. Obrigado.